I'm assuming I get the 80.
Yeah, sure you do.
You really expect me to take 20 and say thanks?
On your hands and fucking knees.
Is this a joke? I used to own
Used to is right. Time's passed you by. Now you're a has-been with some burn scars.
If you ask any Saints Row fan about their favorite game in the series, the overwhelming majority will say Saints Row 2 without any hesitation. Released only months after Grand Theft Auto 4, inevitable comparisons were going to be drawn between the two games, similar to what happened in 2006 with the first Saints Row game. While these comparisons may have been warranted, there's no denying that Saints Row 2 brought in enough fresh new features along with a distinctive personality to distinguish itself from the behemoth that inspired it. In today's video, I will delve into everything related to Saints Row 2 and explain why it stands as one of the best games in the series. For those who are new here, I recently made a video sharing my thoughts on the first Saints Row game, which was released way back in 2006. I highly recommend checking out that video, particularly if you haven't played the first installment in the series. There's a lot to discuss, so sit back, relax, and let's embark on another journey to Stillwater.
Come on, you think I'd just give you a light bulb?
A face shredder, just what I always wanted.
Development for Saints Row 2 began in 2005, a year before the release of the first game, as Volition had anticipated its success, which turned out to be accurate. While the initial work began in the same engine, there was a new project lead this time around. Christopher Stockman, who served as the project lead for the previous game, handed over the role due to burnout from the demanding development cycle of Saints Row 1. With the success of the first game, the development team became more ambitious and passionate about this new project. The official announcement of the game took place in February 2007, around 7 months after the release of Saints Row 1, and the team immediately dived into the creation of the sequel. One of the primary objectives was to establish a unique identity for the franchise. Although I personally believe that the first game managed to differentiate itself from being labeled as a GTA clone, it was still commonly associated with that notion. Just like its predecessor, Saints Row 2 faced extensive comparisons to Rockstar's monumental release, Grand Theft Auto 4, which hit the market a few months earlier. However, it was evident this time that the team was confident enough in their product to directly compete with the GTA franchise. An interview with one of THQ's developers stated, "We wouldn't be releasing this year if we didn't think we could be competitive." They further mentioned, "From what I've read, it seems like they're going in a more realistic direction. For us, it's all about an almost hyper-realistic quality going over the top and creating these memorable moments." To facilitate this vision, many developers from the first game returned for the second game, allowing them to build upon the lessons they learned and deliver a completely fresh experience. During this period, Volition made the decision to work on a port for the PlayStation 3, aiming to expand its reach to a broader audience. However, developing the port in-house proved to be quite challenging due to the PS3's cell architecture, which plagued many games during that console generation. The game faced instability issues throughout development, causing trouble for multiple departments until late in the development cycle. Saints Row 2 experienced several delays, with the first one being attributed to marketing considerations. Volition significantly ramped up the marketing efforts for this installment, hosting multiple fan events to generate hype. Alongside the typical gameplay and story trailers, one of which poked fun at Grand Theft Auto 4.
Would you rather go to the cabaret with a friend? Or inflict serious bodily injuries to your friend to earn a little insurance money?
Marketing involved collaborations with film actors like Gary Busey and even porn stars such as Tara Patrick, with the latter having a role in the game, which I will gladly explain later. The marketing campaign spanned months, being showcased at events like E3, Comic-Con, PAX, and a GameStop Expo, among others. Originally slated for release on August 26, 2008, the game was delayed to October 14, 2008. The additional time was used to add final touches to the game and launch it during a more advantageous window. Saints Row 2 was released on Xbox 360 and PS3, with a PC port coming out on January 5th, 2009. If you're familiar with Saints Row 2 on PC, stay tuned as I will delve into that in just a moment. Upon release, the console versions of the game received favorable reviews, with the console versions achieving scores in the low 80s on Metacritic. However, the PC port didn't fare as well, garnering a score of a 72. Around the time of its release, Saints Row 2 experienced relatively lower sales compared to its predecessor. In its first month, the game sold 350,000 units, whereas the first Saints Row sold roughly 500,000 units its first month. However, Saints Row 2 did manage to surpass Dead Space, which happened to release on the same day. By the end of 2008, Saints Row 2 had sold more than 2 million units, and by September 2010, that number had surpassed 3 million units. It became evident that THQ had a hit on their hands, and many gamers consider it the strongest entry in the entire franchise. Some even go as far as saying it's leagues better than Grand Theft Auto 4. Saints Row 2 was my first Saints Row game, and I remember my dad renting it from Blockbuster one weekend. Although I was definitely too young to be playing this game at the time, I couldn't help but have fun with it. I would eventually get it for free on PlayStation 3 thanks to PlayStation Plus, and had an amazing time discovering what this game had to offer. Now, let's see whether or not Saints Row 2 has aged well over the last 15 years.
I mean, I love the dream house you built here and everything. But what if we just start here? Walk into the casino and just shoot all the motherfuckers that are between us and the money.
Well, you know...
It would be a lot faster.
And a lot more fun.
Before delving into the presentation aspect of Saints Row 2, it's important to address the PC port. Initially, I intended to capture footage for this video through the PC port, and I purchased it on Steam years ago, and while I encountered some issues in the past, such as character movement being sped up, when I started the game now, I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was. Despite having a reasonable build for a game released in 2008, when I started the game now, I was met with a litany of issues. Dropped frame rates, frequent crashing, objects appearing incorrectly during cutscenes, and terrible audio quality, among others.
What you say we go meet the rest of the boys, Shondi?
Good times. Let's go.
I knew things were bad when I couldn't even connect an Xbox controller, as the game would cut to a black screen or straight up crash on me. I was left extremely disappointed by the poor optimization of this port. But what happened? The PC port for Saints Row 2 was handled by a localization team at CD Projekt, which would later be known as Porting House, but is commonly referred to by Volition as CD Projekt Black. They have also worked on porting other games like Dark Sector, a third-person shooter, and Split Second, a high-octane racing game. Among these ports, Split Second was the only one that received favorable reviews on PC when compared to its console counterparts. As I looked deeper into these problems and researched the PC port, I soon found that this was declared as one of the worst PC ports in gaming history by an overwhelming number of people. There is a mod available for the game called the Gentlemen of the Row mod, which significantly enhances the PC version and adds some new features. However, there were two reasons why I chose not to install this mod. Firstly, I am relatively inexperienced when it comes to modding games, and I really wanted to avoid any potential headaches that may arise from the process. Plus, it didn't seem to fix every single issue that the game had, as I believe there were still some clipping issues and a fair amount of crashing. Second, I wanted to experience the game and form my opinions based on the most vanilla version possible. Once I discovered there were no general fixes I could apply to the game, I decided to move on from the PC version. It was just too unstable for me to really enjoy and appreciate the game in its entirety. One reason the game hasn't received any significant fixes on the PC version is because of an auction related to THQ's assets following their bankruptcy in 2013. It is believed that the source code was lost during this process. There were reports in 2019 that the source code had been found and efforts were made to make the game playable on modern hardware. However, Mike Watson, the community manager leading the project, sadly passed away from cancer in August of 2021, and there have been no updates regarding the status of the project. Switching over to the version I had on my PlayStation 3, it proved to be much more stable than the PC port. However, this version did have its own set of issues. Personally, it took some time for me to adjust from aiming with a mouse and keyboard to using the stiff joysticks on a third-party PlayStation 3 controller. Oddly enough, my PS5 controller didn't work with this game, despite functioning perfectly fine with every other game I've played on my PS3 so far. The biggest issue I did encounter on the PS3 version was in terms of performance, which should come to no one's surprise. It would noticeably dip when driving over long stretches or during intense chaotic moments. But again, this was to be expected given the limitations of the time, so it was something I had to get used to. The game also froze on me a couple of times, which was frustrating when I hadn't saved the game for a long time. But I believe this was more of an issue with my PS3 rather than with the game itself. In retrospect, playing the game on an Xbox Series X, as I did for the first Saints Row, would have provided a much smoother experience given the technology they are using to enhance older games. But since I had already invested a few hours catching up to where I was on my PC playthrough, I didn't want to start over for a third time. Nevertheless, I can say the PS3 version of the game ran relatively bug-free. I only encountered some minor glitches in the environment and occasions where my homies' arms were clipping into their bodies. With some of the negatives out of the way, we can move on to evaluating all of what Saints Row 2 does extremely well. The city of Stillwater has undergone significant changes and expansions compared to its predecessor. While it maintains the same overall layout, various parts of the city have been completely transformed or added due to the events between the two games. Starting with the main island, Stilwater University is one such notable addition. It is a sprawling campus with multiple buildings and a vibrant campus life, giving it a genuine university feel. Another significant change in this area is the transformation of the Saints Row district by Ultor. The once run-down buildings have been replaced with pristine skyscrapers and Ultor police patrolling the streets. Even the Saints' main headquarters, the church, has been renovated by Ultor. Moving north to the next island, the downtown area has been revamped with neon lights illuminating the streets. It's a stark contrast to the dilapidated lower portion of the map. The suburbs have seen significant expansion with more houses and stores creating a more close-knit community. On the opposite side, the new trailer park district is filled with grimy trailers, giant rusty metal spiders, and a rundown laundromat that houses a fully functional arcade. The developers also had the opportunity to expand on areas they wanted to include in the previous game, such as an underground mall with multiple floors and several stores inside. Going past the mainland, there are two additional islands, one being a nuclear power plant and the other being an entire prison. While the overall vibes of the map remain similar, these new areas make exploration worthwhile. The stores in Stillwater feel more alive than ever before. Familiar stores like Rim Jobs, Sloppy Seconds, and Friendly Fire are still here, but there are additional locations to cater to all your shopping needs. You can visit Brass Knuckles for various melee weapons like pepper spray, a stun gun, or even a katana. If you're looking for some new jewelry, there's Bling Bling, which is a small nod to the name of the prototype for Saints Row 1. Your face is even featured on a billboard advertising the in-game store. Clothing options have been expanded, with some serving as gift shops, such as one at Stilwater University. My favorite options came from the mall, which provide opportunities for the player to go as wild at Let's Pretend or explore the more sensual side at Leather and Lace. Food options in Stillwater have also been expanded. Freckle Bitches remains a classic, but players can also enjoy gyros from the Company of Gyros, donuts from Apollo's, or Chinese food from Fuck Me, Fuck You. These new additions fill Stillwater with a good amount of variety, but stores are not the only locations players can enter. Numerous buildings that aren't marked on the map have a full interior with a ton of activity. Besides your typical strip clubs or laundromats like I mentioned earlier, there are warehouses and casinos you can enter with things you can interact with. The biggest surprise to me came from the airport with a huge interior and a couple of stores inside. The level of detail in the city is staggering, even extending to buildings that cannot be entered, which feature clever names and funny advertisements. The stores and interiors of Stillwater contribute to the vibrant atmosphere and add much needed variety to the city. However, it truly comes alive with its hilarious NPCs that the player encounters. The NPCs roaming around Stillwater are much more dynamic compared to the previous entry. One of the goals the developers had this time around was to create a world that exists independent of the player. This is definitely evident in the behaviors of the NPCs. As you roam around the city, you'll witness them engaging in conversations, smoking, drinking coffee, using umbrellas when it rains, and even taunting or complimenting the player. Some actions are also dependent on their location, like the university, where you'll see people engaging in activities specific to that area. These behaviors were implemented using a node design, as the original engine couldn't support proximity interactions like NPCs sitting together. Unique interactions are triggered when the player is in close proximity, and just like the last game, these NPCs have a lot to say.
Suck it up, you pussy!
Looks like it's almost time for Crouching Tiger Hidden Penis.
So how about that three-way?
Aren't you supposed to be dead?
Need help finding your G-spot, honey?
I want to know what the fuck kind of mutant STD Shaundi gave me.
Oh, why was Shaundi trying to get my 15-year-old to do tequila shots?
If you're ever looking for a new crack course, feel free to take my wife. Seriously.
Ever fuck in a holding cell, baby?
These additions contribute to making Stillwater feel like a more lived-in and immersive city compared to its depiction in the first game. However, while the NPCs add depth to the city, their character models didn't look that great to me. I wasn't the biggest fan of the style they decided to go with here, and it resulted in some ugly looking NPCs. However, the main cast of characters you do interact with look great. The main characters in Saints Row 2 shine in both appearance and voice acting. Returning characters like Johnny, Aisha, and Julius look as good as ever and represent the amount of change that has happened between the two games. The new cast looks fantastic in what many consider their most iconic looks in the series. Furthermore, the voice acting for these characters is excellent, contributing to their overall quality and immersion in the game. The voice acting in Saints Row 1 was very impressive, but Saints Row 2 elevates this aspect to another level. Actors like Daniel Day Kim, Cy Smith, Michael Rappaport, and Keith David return to voice their respective characters, ensuring continuity and consistency. New voices such as Eliza Dushku as Shaundi.
Jealous, Pierce. We're all on the same team. You said before that this guy's in a band called the Feed Dogs, right?
Michael Dorn as Marrow.
I've heard about the connections Altor has. You're gonna get my boys out of jail and help me destroy the Saints.
Neil Patrick Harris as the veteran child.
I used to date this bitch Shaundi, and there's a chance, a small fucking chance, that I might have gotten stoned and told her about the farm.
And Yuri Lowenthal as Shogo.
Don't question me, Junichi. And we're in America. Speak English.
Contribute to the game's diverse and talented cast. And just like the last game, I'm only scratching the surface as dozens more provide their voice for the game. Furthermore, the inclusion of the player being voiced is a significant addition. With 3 male and female voice options available, players have the opportunity to tailor their character's voice to their liking.
We know where he lives, we have his guns, and I say it's time we take that motherfucker out. What you think?
While I only messed around with a few of them, from what I've heard, the actors provide satisfying performances and enhance the overall enjoyment of the game.
If a strung out DJ almost took you out, a crazy motherfucker like Sunshine will tear you apart. I don't have time to babysit you.
The excellent voice acting is put on full display during the cutscenes, which have undergone a major improvement in their production value. The developers have taken steps to make the cutscenes more dynamic and engaging compared to the previous game. There is much more happening within the cutscenes. Characters are now seen moving around and interacting with their surroundings, which made them more engaging. The cutscenes often take place in various locations, such as arcades, gyms, restaurants, and parties. They also exhibit a cinematic quality, particularly those involving the Ronin, with interesting camera work and a heightened sense of drama. Additionally, the implementation of motion capture technology in Saints Row 2 further enhances the cutscenes, allowing for more realistic and nuanced performances, making these characters feel more alive and believable. The use of this technology helps to bring out the best in these actors' performances and adds a layer of authenticity to the cutscenes. The last element of the game's presentation I want to touch on is the music, which plays a vital role in the Saints Row series. To me, this selection of licensed music is peak. Similar to the first game, Saints Row 2 doesn't feature an original score, except for this music that plays in the pause menu, which has since become iconic with this game. Instead, the game has a vast array of licensed tracks from various genres, including hip-hop, rock, reggae, and more, just like the first game. With roughly 170 songs, the soundtrack offers a wide range of music that caters to different tastes. Unlike the first game, the stations I primarily listened to had songs I was familiar with. Nostalgia was the main factor for this, since most of the songs I enjoyed are from genres I wouldn't listen to normally. My favorite radio stations had to be 89.0 Gen X, later changed to Ultra FM, 95.4 K-Rhyme FM, and 107.77 The Mix. The well-curated music collection by Volition ensures that players will have a memorable and enjoyable experience, with the radio being a constant companion while driving around the city. A standout moment in this regard is when the player mumbles along to a-ha's iconic hit, Take On Me. A fun and humorous touch. Additionally, the radio ads in Saints Row 2 still offer hilarious and highly inappropriate content, further adding to the game's unique charm.
World of vice and sin, the wicked go unpunished, but not for long. Porn star by day, warrior by night, Abby Hammerstein is the Bukkake Ninja. This fall, crime comes to an end.
All of these carefully crafted elements seamlessly blend to create an immersive and dynamic experience in Stillwater. The city truly feels alive and vibrant, as if it exists independently of the player's actions. With the city feeling like it's constantly in motion, it's a testament to the exceptional world design in Saints Row 2, making it the pinnacle in open world design. The Saints Row series has always been known for its extensive customization options, and Saints Row 2 takes it to a whole new level. Right from the beginning, you are presented with a wide range of choices and presets to create your character, allowing for some truly unique and wacky creations. A significant addition to this game is the ability to choose between two different genders, catering to the player's personal preferences. For me, I usually prefer the female option in video games, so I took some time to create a nice looking character. The customization doesn't stop at appearance. As I mentioned previously, your character is also fully voiced, and you can choose different voices from the newly added personality tab. This allows you to give your character a distinct facial expression, movement, and combat style, as well as the ability to compliment and taunt. The options are plentiful, and if you ever feel the need for a change, you can visit Image as Designed to modify your character's appearance. This store that specializes in plastic surgery was in the last game, but I never felt the need to go there since there wasn't a need to change any aspect of my character once I initially created him. This level of customization extends to your clothing and vehicles. The game offers a decent variety of clothing options from various stores. Majority of the options available are still grounded and follow the clothing styles from the early to mid 2000s. I did find some one-off stores disappointing in the limited amount of options they provide. Some of the gift shops, like by Jovi, only offered a couple of clothing options, which felt like a waste of resources to me. This doesn't take away from the fun options you do have in store. Let's Pretend was a standout to me, as you can dress your character in some really wacky outfits. This could allow you to invade an airport as a giant hot dog, become a slasher making deals around town, or defending your base in a hazmat suit. Whatever serious moment you want to ruin by being a ninja, the options are available. It's worth noting that the game includes a good selection of clothing options catered to women, which I found to be nice. There's plenty of options here to make your character as normal, as elegant, or as revealing as you want them to be. I will admit I was a bit surprised at the number of options that left very little to the imagination. Car customization is also extensive in this entry. To start, there's a dedicated tab for performance upgrades where you can give your car hydraulics and a nitro boost like before, while making modifications to make your vehicle more sturdy. You can modify various aspects of your vehicle, including wheels, hoods, bumpers, and more. There's a good amount of options here to make for a pretty nice ride. There are a lot of vehicle types you can drive that aren't sedans or nice sports cars too. I mean, the game has a freckle bitch's van, bro. After a good amount of time spent in Stillwater, you'll procure a large list of vehicles, giving you dozens of options to choose from. You're no longer limited to cars this time either. You can drive motorcycles, boats, helicopters, and planes, expanding the number of vehicles you can drive, adding some much needed variety. While there isn't too much to gush over when it comes to the motorcycles, helicopters and planes were a nice addition that made traveling large stretches of the map a breeze. The helicopters are given much more of a focus here as they are used in a handful of missions. The controls weren't necessarily my favorite though, as they felt a bit floaty and took a while to get used to. However, helicopters are available to retrieve at some of your cribs, so you'll have easy access to them. Your cribs still play a major role in the game, and they have also undergone some major changes. They still serve as your personal hangout spot where you can change clothes, gather money from the safe, and just relax between missions. Perhaps you can do this by playing one of the new mini games in the form of Zombie Uprising, where you fight hordes of zombies. It's a very simple mode, but something that offers a nice distraction. You can also customize every single crib you own, from the entertainment setup to the bed. You can even add a stripper pole. Don't judge me, alright? I know one or two of you guys have also done this as well. Members of your crew and the occasional stripper can be seen chilling at your crib as well. The level of customization also extends to your crew by changing their uniforms, taunts, and even your gang sign. Overall, the level of customization in Saints Row 2 is extensive and diverse, allowing you to truly make the game your own. Whether it's creating unique characters, dressing them in a wide range of options, modifying vehicles, or customizing cribs, the game offers a wealth of options to ensure that your version of Saints Row 2 is unique. But let's move on to what you'll be doing for about 90% of the time, which is shooting things. While the core gunplay mechanics in Saints Row 2 remain largely unchanged, several new features make combat much more enjoyable. The responsiveness and tight controls of the guns are as solid as ever. The most welcoming change is the ability to aim down the sights. This feature feels almost necessary in certain situations, although hip fire remains accurate and viable. You can even increase weapon accuracy by completing certain activities. Another exciting addition is the option to dual-wield weapons like pistols and SMGs right from the start. With the right combination, you can quickly tear through enemies and vehicles. There's also a good number of new weapons. Notable additions include the AR-50, specifically the one with the grenade launcher, the pimp cane, Gal 43s, which I used heavily during my playthrough, and the powerful Annihilator RPG with lock-on capability for vehicles. These new weapons provide significant upgrades to an already smooth combat system. However, there's still so much more to talk about. One of the standout features is the ability to use anyone in the world as a human shield. This mechanic adds a layer of strategic gameplay choices, especially in missions. It's worth noting that if you have a cop as a human shield, other cops will cease fire, allowing for easier defense or a quick escape. When you're done with them, you can kill them in one shot, or toss them off a high ledge, adding a satisfying touch to the gameplay. If you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, we can talk about the fact that enemies lie in pools of blood when killed, and bullet casings from your gun drop on the floor after firing. And of course, we can't forget to talk about the ragdoll physics. Melee combat, while not as extensively used, has received some neat additions. There's a decent variety of melee weapons to choose from, including stun guns, pepper spray, katanas, and a freaking chainsaw. There are enough options to make melee combat a viable option for those willing to give it a try. What helps to further separate melee combat apart is the introduction of stances based on the 3 different games. For those who enjoy melee combat, this game will definitely scratch that itch. To further enhance melee combat, you can use improvised weapons by picking up objects scattered throughout the world. These objects can be used to cause additional damage or be thrown at anyone you choose, leading to some entertaining moments as you explore the world and search for makeshift weapons. Overall, the gun and melee combat in Saints Row 2 has been significantly improved and expanded upon, providing a fun time. If you're looking to amp up the fun, cheat codes are the way to go. I mentioned them briefly in my previous Saints Row video because I discovered them so late, but this time I made sure to put them in as early as possible, and boy did I have a blast with them. The game offers a range of cheat codes including the classics like unlimited ammo, infinite health, car mass hole, and milk bones. But where the cheat codes truly shine are the ones that affect the world and the way you play the game. For instance, there's I Am Giant, which turns your character into a hulking figure, or Itty Bitty, which shrinks you down to the size of an ant. What's hilarious about these 2 cheats in particular is that everything else in the game remains its normal size, so you end up wielding tiny or gigantic weapons. However, the cheat codes that impact the world were some of my favorites. Heaven Bound sends everyone you kill floating up into the air. You can make everyone drunk, leading to chaotic and unpredictable interactions, or initiate a pedestrian war on the streets, turning the city into a battleground. And if you're in the mood for something morbidly amusing, you can activate a cheat code that makes pedestrians rain from the skies above. These cheats, among others, add a whole new level of enjoyment and make exploring Stillwater an absolute blast. There is one drawback worth mentioning, though it's not exclusive to Saints Row 2. That would be that cheat codes disable autosave. This can be a minor inconvenience if you forget to manually save your progress and have to end up replaying the same few missions over again, which I unfortunately had to do a few times. However, considering the sheer fun and entertainment value that cheat codes bring, it's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. All of these gameplay features lend themselves well to the activities, which have undergone significant improvement. For those who watched my first video on Saints Row 1, you will have noticed I covered the activities in the story section rather than the gameplay. So why the change here? I ended up doing majority of the activities before I jumped into the main story of the game, so it wasn't ingrained in my story experience as much here. Many fan favorites from the previous game, such as Mayhem and Insurance Fraud, make a return, and they provide even more fun this time around. I want to focus on a couple of activities from the last game that stood out to me here. The first one is Insurance Fraud, which I'll admit I wasn't the biggest fan of in the first game. There you were confined to a single area that often changed unexpectedly, and cars would either rarely spawn or actively avoid hitting you, which makes sense but was rather frustrating to complete as a player. I thought it was going to be the case here until I discovered a hack. To stay in the air longer and gain a bigger score, you have to get hit enough to build up an adrenaline meter. Once this is full, the slightest tap from a car will send you flying in the air. When I went on the freeway where cars spawned non-stop, nothing was stopping me from completing this activity in no time, and I enjoyed my time with this mode a lot. If you want to make this activity even better, turning on the low gravity cheat creates a highly funny experience. Hitman is another activity that I neglected in the first game, but decided to give a try this time around, and I regret not doing so earlier. In this activity, you receive a list of targets and you have to look for them in different districts around Stilwater. The fun comes from what you have to do to get their attention. This can range from simple things like wearing a tank top in the trailer park district to more involved actions like getting drunk in a drive-in theater, performing a hoeing diversion at a strip club, calling a number to have freckle bitches delivered to you, or even killing a pimp. Performing them was incredibly fun and allowed me to appreciate the level of detail Volition put into the game's world. Moving on to the new activities, the ones I really enjoyed were Crowd Control, Fuzz, and Septic Avenger. Crowd Control puts you in the role of a security guard defending a celebrity from crazed fans in the crowd. This activity heavily relies on the new human shield mechanic, as you have to grab them before they annoy the celebrity too much. You earn money for taking them down, but throwing them at specially marked locations rewards you with even more money. The results can be quite gruesome, with fans getting shredded by helicopter blades or run over by trains. Things can get chaotic in later missions, but it's a fun and engaging activity. Fuzz has you impersonating a cop for a reality show, responding to radio reports of disputes around town. These can range from street fights between people dressed as ninjas and pirates to breaking up a steroid ring or catching people engaging in illicit activities in their cars. The scenarios are varied and entertaining, providing a good amount of content to enjoy. Septic Avenger is a straightforward activity where you ride around in a septic truck spraying poop on various places around the city. It's a unique and humorous experience that adds to the game's overall absurdity and fun, although the dialogue from your companion can become quite repetitive very quickly.
Those low-life pimps met a fitting end. Those low-life pimps met a fitting end.
These activities are just the tip of the iceberg, as there are many more to explore, including trailblazing, fight club, heli assault, and countless others. They all contribute to making exploration and causing mayhem in the city a really fun time. While some players will still feel bothered by the fact that you have to complete activities to progress through the story, the activities themselves are so entertaining that I didn't mind. Additionally, completing activities rewards you with some great rewards such as unlimited sprint, powerful weapons, and unlimited ammo. These rewards felt more worthwhile and satisfying to earn than they did in Saints Row 1. Even though cheat codes were right at my fingertips, I found earning these rewards through completing the activities added to the overall enjoyment and sense of accomplishment. It was exhausting having to do them twice, but the way the activities and earning respect have changed made it somewhat bearable. Each activity now consists of 6 missions instead of 8, and they reward you with more respect to help increase that meter. There are additional ways to boost the amount of respect you earn by purchasing clothes, jewelry, and cars, just like last time. These purchases contribute to your style points, but I found that the number of points earned from clothes felt insignificant compared to the substantial boost provided by cars. Once I found that out, I began buying as many expensive cars as I could to make the grind a lot more manageable the second time around. Although I did pull an all-nighter to get them done. To earn even more respect, the game introduces diversion stars, which are earned by completing a variety of tasks. Things such as driving on the wrong side of the road, shooting someone in the nuts, or cooch for the woman, or performing gang kills rewards you with different tiers of respect depending on how high you can keep the streak going. Once I maxed out my style points, these diversions significantly contributed to my respect meter. I found it to be a clever way to reward the player for engaging in various diversions they most likely would have done anyway. This leads me to the aptly named diversions, small mini games scattered throughout the city. These can be things like driving an ambulance to save pedestrians, or engage in vehicle surfing by hopping on top of cars and keeping your balance for as long as you can. Oh yeah, you can also get naked. Your nether regions are covered unless you're just feeling really horny and decide to install some kind of mod. You know who you are. This also lends itself to a couple of different diversions like streaking and flashing pedestrians in another diversion. All of these elements come together to create a sandbox that is rife with things to do and your own stories to create. How many people can say they went to go rescue their homies with "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" blaring in the background? That's really the secret sauce to this game being so special and something that didn't hit me until I got close to wrapping up the story.
What you do to piss these guys off?
Fuck if I know.
Yo,
I signed on for killing gangbangers, not fighting some SWAT team from hell.
Don't worry about it, Pierce. We'll take care of it.
The fuck you mean, don't worry about it? These guys are packing space-age shit.
Saints Row 2's story marks a significant improvement over the first game. While the story in the first game was fun, Saints Row 2 takes things up to another level with a noticeable increase in production quality and solid writing to create an intriguing narrative all around. Before diving into that story, it's important to recount the ending of the first game, something I neglected to talk about previously. In the final mission, the new mayor monologues about the future of Stillwater while we get to see the ramifications of our actions. In a pivotal moment, the boat we're on explodes, ending the game on a cliffhanger. With this in mind, the game automatically expects that the player has already played through the first game, as the opening moments are full of references and callbacks to the previous game.
God, that was a hell of a year. Alderman Hughes, Mayor Winslow, Aisha, Chief Monroe. All murdered by that asshole who's been sitting in intensive care on taxpayers' money.
Our story begins 5 years after the first game, where the player wakes up from a coma and meets Carlos, who helps us escape from prison. The prison sequence offers the player a choice between sneaking out through the roof or fighting their way through. While this choice doesn't have a major impact on the game, it provides players with a sense of freedom in how they approach their objectives. Opting to exit through the roof will initiate a tutorial, allowing players to familiarize themselves with the controls and new gameplay additions. After completing the tutorial, the player and Carlos head to Stilwater, which has undergone significant changes during their absence. Upon returning to the mainland, the player puts on some new threads and, in typical fashion, visits a strip club. It's there that we discover Johnny Gat is in prison and facing a death trial.
I'm curious if you can keep your cavalier attitude when 2,000 volts are running through your body.
Oh yeah? And I'm curious if you can keep acting like a douchebag when I shove that gavel up your ass.
The player races down to the courthouse to set Gat free, and it's not long until the bullets start flying. Once Gat is free, a drive to his house catches the player back up with what's been going on in the last few years.
Troy's the chief of police?
Yo, you better start getting with the times. Julius is missing. Ben King wrote an autobiography. Dex is a... Yo, don't even get me started with Dex. But the real kicker is Troy. In a couple of months, he went from undercover cop to chief of police.
We take Gat to his house in the suburbs, setting the stage for the rest of the prologue. With 2 members of the Saints back in action, it's time to re-establish ourselves. After finding a new location for the Saints to settle down, the next mission focuses on recruiting new lieutenants. The player sets out to find 3 individuals who will become their new crew members: Pierce, Shondi, and Carlos. Pierce is a gangbanger who has a passion for classical music. Shondi, despite being a stoner and most likely has slept with half of Stillwater, is portrayed as highly intelligent and is always prepared. Last is Carlos, a young guy who proved his worth by getting us out of prison. To prove our worth, we complete activities for each of them, showcasing our skills and earning their dedication. Once this mission is complete, the 3 individuals are down to represent the Saints. It also doesn't hurt that they're already donning the Saints colors. The boss delivers a riveting speech, similar to the one Julius gave in the first game, further emphasizing the reformation and unity of the Saints.
I want to know who's calling the shots and what businesses they running. Done. Shondi, you got the Sons of Samedi.
It's gotta be them.
Fuck you say?
It's cool. I got this.
With these lieutenants now assigned to different gangs, you have the freedom to approach missions however you please. 3 rival gangs have taken over Stilwater: the Sons of Samedi, the Ronin, and the Brotherhood. Unlike my previous video on Saints Row, I want to dedicate a good amount of time to each gang because this game adds some depth to most of the gangs you will confront. I won't dive into every single mission, but instead give more of a broad overview of each storyline. These gangs aren't so much centered on the typical gang lifestyle we saw before, however, it's not a drastic departure. These gangs are diverse and their culture shines through. The first gang I want to talk about is the Sons of Samedi, a drug cartel that has dominated the Caribbean drug market and now sets its sights on Stillwater since Los Carnales is out of the picture. Influenced by voodoo magic and the military corruption in Haiti, the Sons of Samedi run this town through fear and aren't afraid to take the necessary means to remain on top, even if that means killing someone in cold blood. They have a strong presence around Stillwater University, and many missions involving them revolve around disrupting their drug supply, stealing their product, destroying their farms, and sabotaging their labs. Pretty standard stuff if I'm being honest. But this is all in service of us taking over their market by making our version of their famous drug, Loa Dust. Since this was the first storyline I tackled, this introduced me to the way the game handles boss fights. On the surface, it's fundamentally the same as Saints Row 1, but add in something different. With these bosses in particular, there are some additional objectives that need to be done in order to take these guys out, adding a fresh twist to the traditional boss fight formula. Veteran Child is a perfect example. After he takes Shaundi hostage, we go to a nightclub where he has her as a human shield. To avoid hurting Shaundi, we have to hit Veteran Child with a flashbang, causing him to let Shaundi go so we can do some damage. This was a cool way of changing up the formula when it comes to handling the lieutenants for each gang. As a quick side note, his death also changes one of the radio stations. Since he no longer hosts Gen X, this is changed to Ultra FM with an automated DJ.
It's hot, hot heat with Let Me In, only on Ultra FM.
Just a nice little detail. Death scenes can also be quite gruesome as well, as we see with Mr. Sunshine. He doesn't go down after taking a barrage of bullets, so we have to chop his head off with a machete to ensure he doesn't get back up. Gotta feel bad for the poor soul who's gonna end up finding that in his hamburger. The Sons of Samedi provide some interesting moments, but to me were the least interesting group out of the three. While they delve deeper into the actual drug process, with the player having to get through an entire mission while they're high, the leaders of this group never really provided anything that stood out to me, especially compared to the other two gangs. They're ruthless drug lords and nothing really more than that. The Brotherhood bears similarities to the Rollers gang from the previous game. Donnie, a member of the Rollers, is even part of the Brotherhood. They drive big trucks and are covered with tattoos, but you can tell this gang has a strong bond towards one another. Unlike the Sons of Samedi and the Ronin, where their crew feels like pawns serving a larger figure, the Brotherhood members feel like a tight-knit family, and each death felt personal. This storyline genuinely made me question our role in the story, as the boss has to make some tough decisions and performs some harrowing acts. These two gangs don't even start out on bad footing, as the boss and Marrow are looking to strike a deal. The two can't come to an agreement, and this is where the feud begins. The Brotherhood has some of the best character development out of the entire game, and I really want to dive into what makes this storyline as good as it was. The very next mission continues this momentum as we get some one-on-one time with Donnie as we take him around town to blow up some of the Brotherhood's trucks. We delve deeper into the character of Donnie and his connection with Lynn. While the mission itself may seem straightforward, the emotional impact lies in the dialogue between Donnie and the boss. Donnie expresses his grief and the impact Lynn's death had on him, revealing the strong bond they shared.
Look, I know you're pissed about Lynn. I am too, but I had nothing to do with killing her.
For those who don't remember, Lynn was a unique character in the first game as she went undercover for the Rollers and faced an unfortunate death at the hands of William Sharp. Donnie's struggle with her loss and the boss's apparent indifference towards his pain creates a poignant moment in the storyline. Following our little ride with Donnie, Carlos meets with the boss on a train to come up with a plan. However, he admits that he doesn't have any leads, which creates a sense of uncertainty and a lack of confidence. This drives the boss to improvise. Taking a glance at the power plant, we take a trip from the mainland and steal some chemical waste. This gets tattooed on Marrow's face, leaving behind a permanent reminder of who they're messing with.
Baby?
This doesn't sit well with the Brotherhood, and they take matters into their own hands. In a shocking turn of events, Carlos is captured by the Brotherhood and subjected to a gruesome fate. We find him attached to the back of a truck being dragged around town. Once we catch up, we find Carlos badly mutilated beyond recovery. it becomes clear that there is no hope for Carlos, and the boss is left with the difficult task of ending his suffering. While this scene was unfortunately spoiled for me beforehand, it's still an emotionally impactful scene. Carlos has been a loyal member of the Saints since the beginning of the game. Despite his young age and inexperience compared to other members like Shandy, he showed great potential and a willingness to learn. This marks a moment that further intensifies the stakes and personal vendetta against the Brotherhood. It adds an emotional weight to the storyline and fueled my desire for justice and retribution. This is continued in the way we handle lieutenants during this storyline. It takes an interesting approach by deviating from traditional boss fights. Instead, the focus is on performing strategic plays to weaken them. One such moment is when the boss captures Jessica and uses her as leverage. Holding her hostage in a bank, we force her into the back of her car. We then proceed to take Jessica to the Ultor Dome where Mero is participating in a monster truck rally. During the event, he performs a stunt that unintentionally results in Jessica's death. The unintended consequences of Mero's actions not only cost the life of his girlfriend, but also intensify the tension between the Saints and the Brotherhood.
What's this?
Do me a favor. When you check the trunk, just remember you should have offered me something better than 20%.
This continues into the next mission with Matt. To extract information about a shipment that has been briefly mentioned, we head to a Feed Dogs concert.
You hear that? That is music.
Pierce, is there something you're not telling me?
Cutting the event short, the boss interrogates Matt, and it becomes apparent that he doesn't know anything about it on purpose. He is intentionally left out of the loop for reasons such as this. He's a simple bystander in the middle of all of this, and all he really wants to do is play music. But the boss ensures that he'll never be able to do that ever again.
Enjoy your retirement, Matt.
This is the moment that truly made me question whether or not we're truly the good guys in this story. Now I say that with heavy quotations because, to be honest, no one is really the good guy in this story. The actions that the boss has done to take down the Brotherhood so far are downright ruthless, but it's not time to slow down yet. From here, it's a bit of busy work as we destroy buses full of Brotherhood who were released from prison, and finally take over the shipment the Brotherhood have been talking about. With these loose ends accounted for, it's time to take the fight to Mero. Fighting waves of Brotherhood, we confront Mero in this storyline's first traditional boss fight. There were a couple of close calls, but defeating him leads to a satisfying cutscene.
Your little buddy screamed like a bitch when we trussed him up. How about you, bitch? You gonna scream?
Yeah! Mero, get out of here! Ugh! Get in, man!
In the climactic final mission, we confront Mero on his home turf while he's in his monster truck. This epic battle marks the powerful showdown where we bring an end to the Brotherhood's reign of terror.
Any last words?
Go to hell.
Among the three gangs in Saints Row 2, the storyline for the Brotherhood is consistently enjoyable across its 15 missions. While some involve familiar objectives, they are executed in a way that keeps the experience fresh and entertaining. Additionally, it's also worth noting that depending on how you tackle these storylines, this could be the first time you see prominent characters like Dane Vogel, the head of Ultor, and Troy Bradshaw, the new chief of police. Vogel plays a significant role in the game's epilogue, so I'll come back to him in a moment. As for Troy, I do wish we could have seen more of his character. There's a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes that I would have liked to have seen fleshed out more front and center. I spent a lot of time on the Brotherhood, so let's switch things up to our last gang, the Ronin. This gang stands out with their distinctive bright yellow jackets, reminiscent of the Vice Kings from the previous game. Similar to the Vice Kings, the Ronin control the entertainment side of Stillwater, specifically focusing on prostitution and gambling. However, the Ronin introduce a unique dynamic between their lieutenants, which adds some much needed depth to their story. Shogo, one of the Ronin's lieutenants, is portrayed as young, impulsive, and fully immersed in the American lifestyle. He finds himself in over his head, struggling to maintain control and power. On the other hand, there's Junichi. He maintains a strong connection to his Japanese roots and is willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish his goals. The missions within the Ronin storyline follow a similar pattern to the previous games. Players engage in activities such as stealing money from casinos, infiltrating an airport, and even blowing up a hotel. Where things really take a turn is when Junichi holds Aisha, Johnny Gat's love interest, hostage. The game handles this pivotal moment with a beautiful and symbolic touch. In a series that isn't afraid to get self-indulgent, this particular scene stands out for its emotional weight.
Yeah, get out of the way!
Rushing Gat to the hospital, we get to witness a different side of the typically stoic and tough Johnny Gat.
Stay away from her. I'm so sorry. Well, where you going, Ish?
This storyline will delve further into the depths of Johnny Gat's character, revealing new facets of his personality. We see more of this in a later mission. After rescuing Gat from the hospital, a funeral is held to honor Aisha. However, Shogo, unwilling to back down and seeking to prove his worth, interrupts the somber occasion.
Look at me when I'm talking to you!
Fuck off, Akuji. I'm not killing anyone at Isha's funeral. Tonight, tomorrow, you name a time and I will gladly fuck you up. But not now.
Shogo's persistence leads to a brutal and furious fight. In a fit of rage, Johnny inflicts upon Shogo a fate worse than death, burying him alive. This storyline showcases the transformative journey of Johnny Gat, taking him through some intense emotional experiences. It sheds light on a different side of his character, exploring his capacity for love, loss, and ultimately, retribution. This game goes beyond the expected portrayal of a tough protagonist, providing a nuanced exploration of the complex layers that define Johnny Gat. This mission in particular is also the perfect segue into how this storyline handles boss fights. They focus on melee combat, specifically utilizing katanas, which adds a refreshing change of pace. The controls for these fights are relatively simple, with one button serving as your primary attack and the other being your dodge/counterattack. While some players may find the repetitive nature of these fights a bit monotonous, they are short enough to keep things engaging. It's important to note that these melee battles only happen in 2 story missions, so the simplicity of the mechanics didn't really become a major issue. These unique elements contribute to the distinctness of the Ronin storyline and provide interesting gameplay variation. The reintroduction of Vogel in the Ronin storyline brings forth significant revelations about Ultor and Dex. Though brief, we quickly learn that Dex has taken a job at Ultor, something I will gladly talk about a bit later. Another notable character who makes a return is Mr. Wong. I have to admit, I had no idea who he was when he first showed up. Since I didn't play the Hitman activity in the last game, I had no attachment to this character. However, it's not long until he quickly proves his formidable skills and becomes an essential ally in the final Ronin mission. Wong and Akuji's rivalry goes way back, so it would make sense that these two would be going at it in the storyline's conclusion. We rescue Wong and in one final fight, put an end to the Ronin and all of the criminal factions that opposed us. After dealing with the Samedi, the Ronin, and the Brotherhood, the Saints face one more threat, Ultor. While the cutscene that plays sets up the epilogue, I believe it would have benefited from being placed earlier in the narrative.
Now, obviously, before we can remodel Shivington, we need to own the land. So how do we do that? By directing the gangs towards Sunnyvale. Not only are we lowering the number of our detractors, we are lowering the property value as well, which means when we buy the land, the savings get passed on to you, the stockholders.
I personally believe this probably could have been placed after the prologue or after taking care of one of the rival gangs. With that being said, with all the gangs out of Stillwater except the Saints, that makes us Ultor's #1 priority. They launch an attack on the boss, Pierce, and Shandi. Rescuing each of them, we plan to infiltrate an area of Ultor that was kept hidden for years. We infiltrate an underground facility known as the Pyramid, which houses many secrets that are unknown to the outside world. Destroying the pyramid causes tensions to escalate between Vogel and his shareholders. Faced with the threat of being fired, Vogel comes to the Saints for help by tipping us off about a boat party attended by Ultor's investors. Considering a boat explosion is what took us out in the first game, I found this to be a bit ironic. This is also reflected in the title of the mission, Salting the Earth Again.
Where was I? Oh yes, salting the earth.
We crash the party, killing all the investors, leaving Vogel to witness the glorious consequences of his actions. With his path clear, Vogel believes nothing can stand in his way. In the final mission, the Saints launch an assault on Ultor. After a failed assassination attempt from Johnny, we chase Vogel to the tower where heavy security awaits. We use a helicopter to disable the security systems and take the fight directly to Vogel. Crashing the helicopter into the tower, we confront him in a fairly straightforward boss fight. We defeat Vogel and he pleads for his life.
Believe me, right now I am agreeing with you 100%, but you have to look at the positives. You're alive, they're dead, and you have the Saints' #1 fan running Ultra.
With Vogel's demise, the main story of Saints Row 2 concludes, but the events that unfold in the epilogue will undoubtedly leave a lasting impact on the future of Stillwater and the Saints themselves. But there is still one more mission that we must tackle before the game is truly over. If you paid attention to the dialogue between Johnny and the player in the game's second mission, you can go to the police station to find out more about Dex, Troy, and Julius on the night of the boat explosion. This mission can be undertaken at any point during the game, but I found it to be a fitting conclusion to the story.
What the fuck was that?
It was the only way.
I said talk, not set off a goddamn bomb.
Relax, Troy. The Saints are finished. Don't try to find me.
After listening to them, you have the option to call Dex, who instructs you to meet him at the church. When you arrive, you are confronted by Julius. However, this turns out to be a trap, as Ultor forces swarm the church. In a defensive battle to protect your old stronghold, the mission concludes with the boss delivering justice to the person who was supposed to be their protector from the start.
You telling me, if I would have asked you to walk away, you would have said yes?
Fuck no, this is my city.
Jesus, you haven't learned a goddamn thing.
Wrong. I've learned that being in charge is better than being a bitch who keeps her mouth shut and does what she's told. Your time's over, old man.
What's happened to you?
I woke up.
You owe me, player. If it wasn't for me, you would have died on that street corner.
If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been in a goddamn coma.
But I guess that makes us even.
Not really.
This final act serves as a culmination of the events that unfolded throughout the game, offering closure and resolving the lingering conflicts within the Saints' inner circle. And with that, the story of Saints Row 2 has come to an end. I thoroughly enjoyed the stories that we got in Saints Row 2. The stories were not only engaging, but they also brought unique elements to the table. The Sons of Samedi, while not groundbreaking, introduced us to a diverse set of intriguing characters and offered some truly offbeat missions, like shooting fish that are carrying drugs. It added an element of wackiness that complemented the overall tone of the game. The Ronin storyline, on the other hand, presented a fascinating mix of characters and showcased their dynamics with interesting boss fights. The katana-based combat and the reintroduction of Mr. Wong brought fresh and enjoyable gameplay moments. Plus, the moments we got to spend with Johnny Gat introduced another side to his character. It was a really good storyline that added depth and variety to the gameplay. However, it was the Brotherhood storyline that truly left a lasting impression on me. The portrayal and exploration of these characters was a compelling aspect. It was a storyline that evoked genuine empathy and made me question the morality of our actions as the player. The Ultor Epilogue served as a satisfying conclusion to the game. Taking control of Stillwater and defeating Ultor gave me a true sense of accomplishment and victory. It solidified our position as the dominant force in the city, leaving nothing to stand in our way. Some players may consider the lack of distinct identities for the gangs to be a drawback. Those who did play Saints Row 1 will notice that the gangs in Saints Row 2 invest in similar areas as their predecessors. One gang focuses on drugs, another on cars, and the third on entertainment. However, I believe that all the gangs received sufficient development and offered something new to the overall narrative. With more cutscenes in the game focusing on the gangs themselves, we gained a deeper insight into these characters, and witnessing their reactions to our actions one mission at a time made it feel like we were making a significant change to the city, especially since I was the boss this time around. Stillwater truly belongs to us, and the journey to get there was unforgettable. This is further elevated by Saints Row 2's excellent cast of characters. While Johnny always stands out as the fan favorite, the other members of the crew, including Shandy, Pierce, and Carlos, were equally interesting in their own unique ways. Among them, it was clear Shandy received the most amount of attention. Her nonchalant demeanor and sharp wit added a layer of charm to her character, making her more than just comic relief. Speaking of comic relief, that role was aptly filled by Pierce. Often late to the party when it came to providing information, he became the lovable laughingstock of the crew. His presence on missions brought plenty of funny moments, such as the unforgettable scene where he sings along to a Neo song while I'm busy shooting down helicopters.
That's what I'm talking about.
Son, you're no Neo.
This mission itself solidified Pierce's character and showcased his ability to bring lightheartedness to the team. Although his humor can sometimes be drawn out, he was a valuable addition to the Saints. Carlos, while not given as much screen time as the others, made a significant impact. It was satisfying to witness his growth and see him become a worthy lieutenant within the crew. His potential was tragically cut short by an untimely demise, but his presence was still appreciated. One aspect that stood out to me was the strong bond among the crew members. Despite having their own individual responsibilities within the gang they're watching, they often intersected and came to each other's aid. This sense of camaraderie added depth to the characters and made the crew feel like a tight-knit family. While the story has its serious moments, the writing perfectly balances humor within the mix.
The oil boon? No shit. When's he coming?
I'll die before I tell you.
Yep.
Johnny!
It'll wash out.
It better.
The writers knew when to crack a joke to lighten the mood and when to get serious. It created a dynamic narrative that kept me engaged throughout. I also didn't feel like there was anything too offensive in the mix. Sure, the argument can be made that some swearing is unnecessary,
Listen up, you fucking bitch.
I don't have access to the same materials you did.
Or the sexual nature of the game is still too over the top, but these elements never really bothered me that much. Additionally, the running joke surrounding the boss's new look from the first game and the fact that they can finally talk added an enjoyable layer of humor to the story.
Surprised, Aisha?
What? That you're here? Or that you're talking?
Pick one.
It's a small touch that was to be expected, but still fun nonetheless. Moving over to the mission design, it represents a significant improvement over this game's predecessor. While there are still your standard open world missions, like eliminating a certain number of enemies or destroying vehicles, they are balanced by a good amount of missions that introduce new mechanics and provide fun and unique ways to overcome certain objectives. For instance, one mission that stands out is when Shaundi and the boss infiltrate a police station to tap into traffic cameras and locate the Samedi general. Another mission involves laundering stolen money from a Ronin casino by navigating to different locations throughout the city. What's impressive is that about 90% of the missions offers players distinct and varied objectives, ensuring that each mission feels fresh and exciting. If there is one thing I will not call Saints Row, that would be repetitive. I also felt that missions this time around were a lot more balanced. I didn't find myself becoming as frustrated this time around, and I can't recount a time where I had to seek an alternate solution to complete objectives like I did in the last game. While there are still some challenging moments, the developers wisely included mid-mission checkpoints, which proved to be a necessary and welcome feature. No longer did I have to restart a mission from scratch if I made a mistake or encountered something difficult. This allowed for more experimentation and reduced the frustration associated with repeating entire missions. The vehicle missions this time around also posed less of a challenge for me since I finally figured out how to change the driving controls. The added ability of cruise control made taking out enemies or other vehicles a breeze. However, I found missions where I rode shotgun and defended a vehicle to be a bit sloppy in their execution. The AI didn't always navigate smoothly, often crashing into objects or taking unnecessarily long routes to reach the destination. This did make these missions in particular feel somewhat tedious and a bit frustrating. Just like the last game, you continue to unlock different hoods that provide passive income for the player. This time you can also purchase stores within each respective hood, which not only generate additional income, but also grants discounts on items available in these stores. Furthermore, the presence of crew members guarding the purchased stores shows the growing influence of the Saints. Additionally, at the end of each mission, players are given a newspaper clipping with a humorous headline. Moreover, you can return to your crib to read further details about the mission, providing additional context. This also comes through in the news reports by Jane Valderrama explaining what happened during the last mission.
Today, an explosion deep within Mount Claflin destroyed more than just bedrock. It obliterated our fragile beliefs. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're sitting down. The pyramid is real.
Or random civilians you pass in the street remarking on significant events that happened throughout the story.
After what they did to Carlos, I'd raise the whole fucking gang if I was you.
The strongholds remain a familiar gameplay element. Players are tasked with clearing out different sections of the map, eliminating the respective gang presence, and claiming control of that hood. While the fundamental concept remains the same as in the previous game, this time the lieutenants for each gang provide players with intriguing backstories and insights on the area we are taking over.
This is Spackle Fishing Industries. Veteran child took me here to stuff frozen fish with Loa dust on our first date. It was good times.
Upon completing the main story at around the 20-hour mark with 68% completion, I still found plenty of content to keep me entertained in Stillwater. There were numerous side activities and challenges left to explore and conquer, offering several more hours of gameplay. While multiplayer remains an option for players inclined towards that experience, it wasn't something I personally sought out. I know a few of you guys commented about the fun factor that came from multiplayer in Saints Row 1 and 2, but I don't necessarily come to these games for that or its co-op. There's no denying that there is fun to be had, it just isn't for me. Plus, I can no longer access the multiplayer on PS3 due to the shutdown of GameSpy, the service that supported the game's online functionality. Before wrapping up the video, I should mention that there is a decent amount of DLC available for the game, but I found it rather disappointing. The first DLC, titled Ultor Exposed, introduces Tara Patrick, an Ultor microbiologist seeking revenge against Ultor. Let's go on ahead and get one thing out of the way before diving into this DLC. For the uninitiated, Tara Patrick is a former porn star and was the recipient of an AVN Award, X-Biz Award, and a Penthouse Pet of the Month, just to list off a few of her achievements. What? I just couldn't let all that research go to waste. Getting back on track, there are 3 missions that are fairly standard, with the first involving digging up corpses around the map.
Hey, did you find the first body yet?
It's been like 30 seconds. What's the rush?
Well, I'd like you to find the damn things before a Masako team comes after me.
The second mission involves hijacking a chemical truck, and the final one culminating in Tara's attempt to expose Ultor on the news. However, news reporter Jane Valderrama twists the story, making Tara appear to be the villain.
And why do you think Ultor is responsible?
I conducted the experiments myself.
So these were the acts of a crazed individual.
Excuse me?
You said that you conducted the experiments.
Well, yeah, but...
So you admit that you perverted science to serve your own twisted desires.
No! Ultor was the one that was...
It's an all too familiar tale.
There isn't really much to unpack with this DLC. The missions are your typical fare of open world missions, and Tara's addition doesn't really bring anything particularly interesting to the table. While there are some ironic lines given her profession,
You'll be fine. Can't you just imagine people in their underwear?
That won't work. I've got a thing with nudity.
Then I guess you're fucked.
she generally comes off across as dull, which is somewhat expected given her various acting roles. The next DLC, Corporate Warfare, continues the Ultor storyline, but focuses on Dex, a former member of the Saints. The new CEO of Ultor, Eric Griffin, enlists the Saints' help in taking down Dex. These missions, again, like the last DLC, involve objectives such as protecting Griffin's car, destroying toxic waste that Dex plans to sell, and assassinating targets that are close to Dex. It was interesting to see what Dex has been up to and how he changed since the first game, but I found these missions to be quite difficult, especially the second one. It's worth noting that this DLC was designed with co-op in mind, which likely led to the number of times I had to replay this mission. The floaty helicopter controls, in combination with the number of targets, made this mission extremely frustrating. However, what really bothered me was the fact that Dex is essentially gone after the second mission, and the storyline abruptly ends. The boss mentions seeking payback.
So what are you gonna do now?
I'm gonna find out which city Dex ran to and get the bitch.
But it doesn't seem to really go anywhere, especially since Dex only appears in Gat Out of Hell, which implies that he doesn't meet a fitting end. There was a cancelled Saints Row game titled Saints Row Money Shot, where you play as an assassin named Cypher. In one of those missions, your target is Dex, which most likely means this was how he was meant to die in the series. But since the game was never actually released, we'll never know. Steve Jaros, the writing lead for the Saints Row series, has brought up the fate of Dex numerous times. He mentioned his death in Money Shot, but doesn't consider him dead from a writing standpoint. There was talk to reintroduce him at a later time, but considering the direction the series has gone, this is highly unlikely to happen. This teasing without a satisfying resolution left me baffled. The same also goes for the Ultor Exposed DLC, where Tara claims she's gonna get her revenge one day, but we all obviously know that's not gonna happen. I just don't really understand why Volition decided to leave both of the DLCs with a cliffhanger that won't get resolved anytime soon, but hey, who knows. The last DLC, Uncut, only offers new clothing, tattoos, and jewelry for the player. While nothing particularly special, it was a free DLC, so I can't really complain. The other two DLC packs provide similar options, and I found them more appealing. The clothing choices were cool to experiment with, and the addition of new vehicles, including a flying saucer, was really enjoyable. One of them also seems to make the Saints Row series part of the Red Faction universe, which was a pretty cool connection considering Volition is the same developer for that series. Overall, the DLC offers decent content for its price. If you're looking to extend your time in Stillwater and add some extra playtime, it's a nice way to do so.
I can't believe you got your ass kicked by that chump.
Did I mention that my ex-boyfriend's a dick?
You should go home and rest.
If by resting you mean smoking an ounce, then hell yeah.
After thoroughly discussing the various aspects of Saints Row 2, this game stands as the pinnacle of the series. The expanded open world allows for explosive mayhem to unfold on the streets, in the skies, and even in the water. The intertwining stories within Saints Row 2 are incredibly engaging, featuring a captivating cast of characters that culminate in a highly satisfying conclusion. However, at the heart of it all is you, the boss, who has undergone tremendous growth and has become a formidable force in the criminal underworld. Saints Row 2 exemplifies what makes a remarkable sequel that builds upon the solid foundation of its predecessor. While Saints Row 1 was a good game, Saints Row 2 surpasses it in every conceivable way. I have lost countless hours of sleep immersing myself in everything Saints Row 2 had to offer, and I now completely understand why so many fans consider it the best in the series. I can confidently say that Saints Row 2 is the best game in the series so far. I don't want to get ahead of myself because it's been a really long time since I played Saints Row 3 and 4. While fan reception on those games isn't the greatest, I do remember having a lot of fun with those games when I was younger, so I am curious to see if those two games in particular hold up as well as Saints Row 1 and 2. But again, as of right now, Saints Row 2 is at the top of my list. While it may have a few rough edges, they are inconsequential when compared to the sheer amount of fun I had with this game now. As I mentioned in my first Saints Row video, this game truly deserves a remaster, allowing gamers to experience the magic that made the series so special to countless players. That about does it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I would really like to hear more of your thoughts regarding this game. You guys made your thoughts known in the first Saints Row video, and I want you guys to keep it going. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I will see you guys next time.